I see the senator from Montana, and I'd be happy to entertain a question without losing the floor.
Will the senator from Kentucky yield for a question without losing his right to the floor?
Yes.
I want to thank my colleague for raising this important issue on the Senate floor today. You know, it wasn't all that long ago that as a House member, I served one term in the House and then came over to the Senate this year. I came over to the Senate floor and I stood in support of your efforts to protect the American civil liberties and ensure that drones aren't being used to target American citizens on our own soil. And in fact, I'm grateful to see that in the Senate chamber today, we have 5 House members who are here standing with the senator from Kentucky as he's making this very, very important point as relates to our Constitution and our freedom. Well, 2 years later, we're here again, and the threats to America's civil liberties and constitutional freedoms remain ever present. As my colleague from Kentucky is well aware, I spent more than 12 years in the technology sector before being elected to Congress. I know firsthand the power that big data holds. I also know the great risks that arise when this power is abused. There is a clear and a direct threat to American civil liberties that comes from the mass collection of our personal information and our phone records. I, like so many Montanans, are deeply concerned about the NSA's bulk metadata collection program and its impact on our constitutional rights. In fact, just last night, I hosted a telephone town hall meeting with thousands and thousands of Montanans. And one of the issues I heard most about was the NSA's bulk data collection program. And when is Congress finally going to put a stop to it? In fact, this is one of the issues I hear most about from my fellow Montanans. In fact, I've brought down just a few of the thousands of letters I've received from Montanans on the NSA's dangerous bulk metadata collection program. For example, here's Adam from Missoula. Adam writes, "I'm writing to ask you to allow Section 215 of the Patriot Act to expire on June 1st of this year. While it's only one provision of the larger problem, it would at least begin to curtail the surveillance of Americans. As Americans, we should be free to communicate without the threat of the government monitoring those communications. Wanting to hide your life, to keep your life private, does not mean you have something to hide. Only that your life isn't any of the government's business as long as you're not infringing on the liberty of others. At the end of the day, giving up our liberties because of the threat of terrorism truly is the definition of terrorism winning. To be free inherently means a person also incurs risk." Even though he was speaking about taxes, I believe Benjamin Franklin would agree when he said, "Those who would give up essential liberty to purchase a little temporary safety deserve neither liberty nor safety." Jess from my hometown of Bozeman, Montana, wrote this: "I am writing to you as your constituent. NSA spying needs a comprehensive overhaul. But in the meantime, I urge you to show that you care about the Constitution by voting against reauthorization of Section 215 of the USA Patriot Act. Section 215 has been used to invade the privacy of millions of people. Although some in Congress and the NSA have argued that collecting call detail records, quote, metadata, is not privacy invasion, the information collected by the government is not just metadata. It paints an intimate portrait of the lives of millions of Americans. What's more, the collection of call detail records isn't even necessary to keep us safe. The President, the Privacy and Civil Liberties Oversight Board, and the President's Review Group have all admitted that collection of call detail records is not necessary. In fact, the Privacy and Civil Liberties Oversight Board went so far as to note that it could not identify a single time in which bulk collection under Section 215 made a concrete difference in the outcome of a counterterrorism investigation. That's why I urge you to support reform by committing to a no vote on the reauthorization of Section 215. A vote against reauthorization is a vote for the Constitution. Thank you for opposing unconstitutional surveillance and for supporting a free and secure internet. You know, Montanans are right to be concerned. This program is a direct threat to our constitutional rights. It has jeopardized our civil liberties with little proven effectiveness. And I'm the son of a U.S. Marine. Several weeks ago, I was with Leader McConnell and other senators. When we went to Israel, we met with Prime Minister Netanyahu. We went to Jordan and met with King Abdullah. We went to Iraq and met with Prime Minister Abadi. We were both in Baghdad. We went up to Erbil and met with the leaders of the Kurds, including Mr. Barzani. We then went to Afghanistan. We were in Kabul. We were in Jalalabad. We met with President Ghani. We were hearing directly from the leaders in the Middle East. We were hearing directly from our U.S. military. We were hearing directly from U.S. intelligence about what's going on in the Middle East. As a father of four, someone who believes strongly in a strong national defense and the importance of protecting the homeland, I weigh these issues very, very deeply. These are heavy issues we must look at as we want to ensure we protect the homeland, but importantly, protect the Constitution and the constitutional rights of the American people. As my colleague is likely aware, a 2014 report from the Privacy and Civil Liberties Oversight Board, which is a nonpartisan, independent privacy board, found that the NSA's bulk data collection program, and I quote, said contributed only minimal value in combating terrorism beyond what the government already achieves through other alternative means. And like the New York-based Second Circuit U.S. Court of Appeals recently unanimously confirmed, this oversight board also found that Section 215 of the Patriot Act does not provide authority for the NSA's bulk metadata collection program. In fact, the report states, and I quote, under the Section 215 bulk telephone records program, the NSA acquires a massive number of calling records from telephone companies each day, potentially including the records of every call made across the nation. Yet Section 215 does not authorize the NSA to acquire anything at all. It's illegal. It's an overreach of power. And it's a direct threat to our First and Fourth Amendment rights. In fact, the report goes on to conclude, and I quote, the program lacks a viable legal foundation under Section 215. It implicates constitutional concerns under the First and Fourth Amendments. It raises serious threats to privacy and civil liberties as a policy matter, and has shown only limited value. For these reasons, the government should end the program, end quote. I stand here today with the people of Montana. I stand here today with my colleague from Kentucky. I stand here today with 5 members of the U.S. House who are seated in the back of the Senate chamber. Congressman Duncan of South Carolina, Congressman Blum of Iowa, Congressman Massey of Kentucky, Congressman Labrador of Idaho, Congressman Amash of Michigan. You know, I think it's important that the Senate recognizes what the People's House did last week when they passed the USA Freedom Act. That vote was 338 to 88. And to suggest that this is just a small minority of congressmen and women that support the USA Freedom Act, this was the chairman of the Judiciary Committee, the chairman of the Intelligence Committee, the chairman of the Armed Services, the chairman of Homeland Security, amongst many others who want to ensure we strike the right balance between protecting the homeland and protecting our civil liberties. The people of Montana, my colleague from Kentucky, the 5 members of Congress who are here at this moment, and millions of Americans know that I strongly agree with their view on the USA Freedom Act. Now, like all Americans, I understand the great risks facing our national security. The threats of ISIS, the threats of North Korea, the threats of Iran grow stronger each and every day. And we must be prepared. And we must ensure our intelligence and law enforcement agencies have the tools they need to protect and defend our nation. But these objectives, national security and protection of our civil liberties, are not mutually exclusive. We can and we must achieve both. We must maintain a balance between protecting our nation's security while also maintaining our civil liberties and our constitutional rights. All of us standing here today took an oath to protect and defend the Constitution. I took that oath just a few steps away from speaking here today between myself and the presiding chair of the U.S. Senate, Senator Mike Lee. And all of us here today know the fight to protect our Constitution and American civil liberties is far from over. We must remain vigilant, and we must also ensure that we have robust and transparent debate about these programs and what reforms must be implemented to protect America's civil liberties. And this is why I support the USA Freedom Act, which would end the NSA's bulk metadata collection program, and why I strongly believe that Congress must engage in an open amendment process. The American people must have their voices heard, and an open amendment process will help ensure that happens. In light of all we have learned about the NSA's unlawful bulk data collection program, it's clear that reforms must happen. It's critical that Americans' rights are protected against the overreach of their own government. So I asked the senator from Kentucky, would he agree that the indiscriminate government collection of Americans' phone records violates the Constitution and, according to 2 independent commissions, has not proven critical to our national security?
I want to thank the senator from Montana for that excellent synopsis of things and also for the great question.